everyone, how are you doing? It's me, Angelo Nasios. I have started a new YouTube channel called Notorious Hellene. This is going to be a new project I want to work on where I talk about Hellenism and also respond to some of the things that I see online regarding Hellenism that comes from the pagan community. So again, this is me talking as a Greek within the Greek community, responding to the things that I see from the pagan community, which I feel are inappropriate and cross the lines of respectability and can be considered cultural appropriation or offensive to the Greek community. And so, yeah, this is what this channel is going to be about. I'm also going to try and do my own videos, on topics and things as they come to mind. So this is sort of an extension or a continuation of the Hearth of Hellenism blog that I had on Pathos. I went quiet for a while on my writing or videos or whatnot, and now I want to kind of start back up and re-engage a little bit on it with a YouTube channel this time, a new YouTube channel. And really try to maybe the things that are being said online, it's out of control, it's very one-sided, and it's not correct. There's a lot of things that are not correct. So we're going to try and I'm going to try and bring some clarity to that and add my voice to this, because there's things that need to be said that aren't really being said by the pagans, either because they don't know or they just don't want to talk about it. So I will talk about it. So this video is going to be a response to Aliaki, their latest video. What is the difference between Hellenism, Hellenist, Hellenic, Hellene, and Hellenistic? Okay, so I have some wine to drink to deal with this. So let's begin with the video.
Sorry my voice sounds like I gargled a bag of rocks and put the results through a wood chipper. Don't feel sick at all, but I was cleaning the house yesterday and might have inhaled a little too much of the stuff I was using on the cabinets. Oops. There seems to be some confusion and infighting in the community regarding the terms Hellene, Hellenistic, Hellenic, and Hellenism. What
community? First of all, there's fighting in the community. What community? Why do you think that Greeks are in your community? So, right off the bat, there's a problem here, that the YouTuber here, Aliaki, starts off with as infighting in the community. No, there is inter-community fighting between pagans and Greek people over terms and labels, and it is between Greek people, the Greek community, and the pagans in the pagan community. So we have two communities here, not one. I'm not in your community.
What do all of them mean in the community of large? What do they mean when I use them on the channel? Let's go to Hellas. Let's take a look.
Ha, funny. That joke only works in English.
Kairete. This week, I received an item on my wish list without a tag letting me know who picked it up, and the person didn't message me in my Discord when I asked, so I suppose I need to thank an anonymous donor for getting me Human Sacrifice in Ancient Greece by Hughes, who examines many assumptions of evidence for supposed human sacrifice in prior scholarship and challenges the assumptions inherent in each. It's already been a fascinating read because, of course, as soon as I opened the package, I had to start diving into it. So thank you so much to whomever donated it. If you in the audience decide to pick something up for me off my wish list and wish to get thanked in the future, please make sure that you attach a gift receipt with your display name or the name you want to be thanked by. If it's appropriate, as is the message, I'll read the message at the beginning of the next video I record after receiving it. Thank you again to the anonymous person who picked this one up. From Kaleidoscope, we have practitioners of the divine, Greek priests and religious officials from Homer to Heliodorus. This will help me a lot in my upcoming work on the priestly class and how much of Hellenic religion was practiced in the home versus the temple. It was a lot more hands-on, as you would say. Thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to me. The terms Hellenism, Hellenistic, Hellenic, and Hellenist all come from the Greek word for the people of Greece, which is Hellene. The idea of a unified Greece and unified Greek citizenship, however, is a relatively modern one. Prior to the Trojan War, according to Thucydides, there was some
Thucydides? Okay.
recognition of a similar culture in the sense of sharing gods, but much focus was placed on the citizenship within a particular city-state rather than any idea of a unified Greece as a country or identity.
Okay. So let's respond to that. So if you actually go to school to learn history, you will learn that the way that we talk about Greek identity changes, from generation to generation. Scholars change how they want to approach this. And from my understanding, I guess this is the most recent way of how they approach this, present it. At least this is how it was presented to me in my graduate schoolwork. That they talk about Greek networks and Greek identity. So I'm looking back at some of my notes from the class, and it says here the term Hellas originally was applied to one particular part of Greece, the region of Thessaly in central Greece, and was not until the end of the 7th century BCE that it came to mean the whole of the Greek world. From the second half of the 8th century to the beginning of the 5th century BCE, Greeks were dispersing, going east and west, and in the going, they became somehow more Greek. The networks that grew up in this process contributed to the formation of a distinct Greek identity. Ancient Greece had no centralized national territory. Instead, Greeks had different circles of identity, which existed simultaneously. The same individual might identify as a citizen of a polis, of a particular Greek ethnicity, as a colonist of a polis. Greeks had shared commercial, religious, and social networks. Quote, eventually, rather quickly, the distinct networks would overlap or intermesh to create the matrix that formed the basis for collective Greek identity and civilization. Okay, so what that is trying to get across to the student, this lecture from graduate school on Greek civilization, Greek identity, is that the takeaway is Greek identity is not it's not like not real, that it is actually based on something, and it's not as pagans often try to present Greek identity and the Greek history as really detached from one another, and that there is too much difference to actually have something that's unified. And any sort of Greek unity is either a later construction, or it's nationalistic, or it's not really real, it's not really historic. And that's really not the case. From what I just read to you in my class notes, is that the Greek identity and civilization is based off of networks, and those networks are based on shared commonalities. And through that process, you have more unification does occur over time and very quickly through the process of networks and trading and traveling around the Mediterranean Sea. So what Aliaki here is saying is very misleading and not really very accurate. It's based off old scholarship.
Citizens of other city-states were referred to as resident aliens when dealing with legal code, and weren't treated too much differently than outright foreigners during this time. Again, at least legally. The term originated first from a myth found in Hesiod's Catalogue of Women, in which we're informed that Deucalion and Pyrrha, survivors of a gigantic catastrophic flood, had a son named Helen, who was revered as the ancestor of all modern Greek peoples. Well, modern at the time, anyway.
Shady.
His kids supposedly sired all the various ancient Greek tribes that later united into city states through conquering or democracy, and from this, a national identity was tentatively formed. Though it had to do with culture and perceived ancestry, it didn't have a lot to do with religion directly until later. In fact, Hellene became a term of identity itself tied to religion after Paul began writing his letters that were later gathered into the New Testament. He refers to non Hebrews as Hellenes in Acts and Galatians, similarly to how the Septuagint combined with cultural forces to redefine the term daimon.
Okay, so whatever Paul thinks about the term Hellene is irrelevant because Paul is a Christian and we don't go by Christian definitions.
So, Hellene came under a new definition under Christian influence. It basically meant any pagan living within the boundaries of the then current Greco-Roman
Okay, gotcha.
Symbolization, including those practicing faiths other than what we now consider to be Hellenism. Don't worry, I'll get to the infighting over modern...
Okay, so I see what you're trying to do here. You're trying to say, well, because Paul said this, and it was viewed that anyone who was basically a pagan, someone worshiping ancestral religions, they are a Hellene. Okay, that is a Christian view. That is a Christian definition. So, are you reviving a Christian definition of something that it refers to? So you're using etic definitions to revive an emic identity. I don't understand why the Christian identity is really important here. Like the Christian definition is really important. Like, you're not going to use the Christian definition to justify your own identity, are you? I don't get that.
Definitions soon, but we really do need to take a look at the history to understand where some of this fighting comes from. By the 4th century CE and Emperor Julian's reign, Hellene referred to someone who specifically practiced the ancient pagan traditions in the old way, not simply to those of Greek birth or culture.
Okay, well, Julian, in his writings, clearly says that he himself is not a Hellene. So even Julian was not even trying to appropriate Greek identity. And he was the person who coined the term Hellenismos, and it was a collective, I guess catch-all to Greek customs and perhaps other things also that were before Christianity. Okay, but again, that is Julian, and he wasn't Greek. He says himself, I'm not a Hellene. So
Julian,
we Greek people take what he says with a grain of salt. Much respect to him, but again, a grain of salt.
And specifically coined the next term, Hellenismos, from which Hellenism is derived, to describe this ancient religion and distinguish it from Christianity.
Yes, Hellenism is the English for Hellenismos.
Later, those who practiced Christianity but were still of Greek descent began referring to themselves as Romaioi, as Hellene picked up a pejorative connotation as Christianity spread throughout the empire.
Yeah, so because Greek people still wanted to keep they wanted to acknowledge their Greek ancestry without having to use the term Hellene, they used the I can never say the word, Romioi. They use that term. It's like it's a slight variant on Roman, but it's not Roman. So it's a way of the Greek people then, for them to still acknowledge their Greek ancestry without being connected to any sort of pejorativeness, that we're not actually technically of the Romans or of the Greeks, but we're Christians. It's a fucking mess, the identity stuff of this time period, because they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, and figuring out labels that they can use that won't get them, have their property confiscated through inheritance. You know what I mean? Like, there were laws. The Theodosian Code had laws. One of the laws was that if you are Greek, Hellene, if you're an Hellene, you cannot, your children can't inherit from you after you die. So, how are you going to get around those things? So people need to context these identities with the lived experience of those times,
Empire, especially following Justinian's decrees in the 6th century, barring the practicing of any rites of Hellenismos and destroying the lives and properties of those who just still held on to the ancient ways.
Mm-hmm.
By the 12th century, Hellene became an entirely pejorative term that most of Greek descent avoided until the nationalist movements of the 19th century.
Not really.
Most folks still avoided the term outside of these circles and still used the older term Romaioe. Which brings us to the modern day. I've linked an excellent blog post in the description that sums up the history and includes details that I didn't, as well as citations within it to further sources if you'd like to dig into the etymology and cultural evolution of the term and identity. Needless to say, it's meant a lot of things to a lot of different groups over the centuries. Anything in that post that I could get my hands on, I've read through to confirm the account. I normally avoid using tertiary sources, but in this case, it really is one of the best summations I've read so far online of the history and skips over some of the detail found in the secondary sources referenced. Before I get too deep into the modern controversy, I should probably distinguish Hellenic from Hellenistic. This will be important later. Hellenic generally refers to something that is specifically associated with ancient Greece, particularly pre the Hellenistic period. The Hellenic gods, Hellenic pagan.
Okay, so technically, these terms, Hellenic and Hellenistic, originate in art history, and they are labels that art historians use to identify artifacts from the different time periods. So if something was called Hellenistic, you knew that this statue came from the Hellenistic period. It's referring to the time period of its production. And then, like most things, those labels get taken up and used in other fields and other places as some sort of real concrete identity. So, for example, right here you're saying like a Hellenic pagan. You have just taken a label from art history to identify a statue, and then saying, well, now I worship in this way. I'm a Hellenic pagan. You see how it's a trickle down sort of how these labels just spread.
In Hellenic polytheism, Hellenic artifacts, etc. It specifically refers to anything prior to the Hellenistic period, though in the modern day, it's also sometimes used to refer to the specific language grouping of ancient and modern Greek dialects.
Yes, because Hellenic is just another way to say Greek. I feel like people forget that. Like Hellene means Greek. It's just in English we say Greek. And if you're speaking Greek, you say Hellene. So Elinas. I don't like this stuff. I don't know why it's so complicated for non-Greeks to grasp.
As well as to things that relate to Greek culture. Generally, if I use it, it's in the former, more scholarly sense, specifically to talk about things prior to the Hellenistic period in ancient Greek culture. Hellenistic, on the other hand, refers to a specific era in ancient Greek and Roman history filled with syncretism between Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and Semitic traditions and Hindu and Buddhist traditions. During this time, Greek religion and culture spread far and wide and mingled with many other cultures in the Mediterranean region. This period spanned from the death.
Greek culture spread because Greek people brought it with them. People always forget that. Like, how does culture actually spread? It spreads with people. It doesn't grow legs and walk on its own. So culture doesn't spread on its own. It needs people to bring it someplace.
Death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC.
And it needs people to actually do the syncretism. You need more than one culture interacting with each other. You need more than one culture interacting with each other to produce something that's syncretized. So, yeah.
And is said to have ended around the time of the rise of the Roman Empire in the early 1st century, though I've seen a range of dates online from various sources. If something is referred to as Hellenistic on my channel, I'm usually referred to the syncretic practices and ideas that emerged during this specific period, though I tend to focus on the classical and archaic periods for my own reconstruction. So, someone who practices a syncretic, Kemetic, Roman, and Greek religion and honors deities from each would be a Hellenistic pagan, as opposed to someone who honors the Greek gods in the older way, which would be Hellenic. Both could technically be referred to as Hellenists, or those who practice one of the modern branches of Hellenism. I generally see Hellenism as specifically Hellenic, but because Julian Hellenists practice the syncretized mix of Religio Romana and Hellenism, I recognize that this could technically be exclusionary. Just know that if I'm referring to syncretism on my channel that emerged during that era, I'm likely referring to it as Hellenistic rather than Hellenic. Many modern groups have reclaimed the term Hellene and Hellenismos as religious signifiers for practitioners of the modern reconstructed religions. However, members of the YSCE, also known as the Supreme Council of Ethnicoi Hellenes, as though that's not an immediate dog whistle, and
immediate dog whistle for what? I don't understand. Why is that a problematic term for you? I don't get it. Do you not understand like the Greek language?
and some other groups from Greece and their American branches object to the use of these names by groups and practitioners outside of their circles, claiming that in order to be a Hellene, one must Hellenize, and Hellenization must be defined by ethnic Greeks.
Okay, I think this is okay. This is Hellene is an ethnonym. Okay, so it's the label of an ethnic group of people, an ethnicity, Greek. You need to okay. You need to start understanding that Hellene is not strictly a religious category. Hellene is not a religious identity. It's not strictly a religious identity. It's an ethnonym. Go Google ethnonym. So I have always been a Hellene. I've always been Greek. I'm a Greek American. I've always been Greek. I've always been a Hellene. My religious affiliation and what I practice has changed in my life, and identify and practice the Greek tradition, which you like to call Hellenism, Hellenismos. You can use Hellenismos in a religious sense, but it's, again, not strictly a religious category. This is the problem. I think this is really the breakdown between the pagans and the Greek people, is that they don't understand categories. They don't understand these terms that they use and how words are interchangeable. Hellene and Greek are equivalent. They're interchangeable. I've always been Greek. I'm Greek American. I'm Hellene. It's just the language you're speaking in. When we speak in English, we see Greek. So you understand what my ethnicity is. If someone says, "What's your ethnic background?" I say I'm Greek. I could also say Hellene, but people don't know what that is because that is the Greek word, and so we use the English word. This is very easy things, and Hellenism is not strictly a religious category. So Hellenism refers to the national character and qualities of Greece today. Its national character and its identity is you can use Hellenism for it because it's not occupied. It's it's where Greek people live. So their culture is called Hellenism. It is. This is not my opinion. This is fact. This is common fact about Greek people. Go into Hellenic studies. Go into any other field other than whatever it is that you're doing. Whatever this is that you're doing, I don't know what it is where you're getting your knowledge from. I really don't understand where you're getting your knowledge from. It seems very out of date and not in real connection to current affairs. I really don't know. Yeah, so Hellene. Again, going basics. Hellene, Greek, ethnonym. Plain and simple. Now, if I want to use Hellene in a religious sense, that's my business. But again, Hellene is not strictly a religious category that you, Aliaki, for example, I know you don't do this, so this is, okay, I won't use you as an example, I'll use someone as an example. Billy down the street, says to himself, "Oh, I'm going to worship the Greek gods, and therefore I am a Hellene." It doesn't work that way. Hellene is not a religious, purely religious label. And even if it was or is purely religious, the way Hellenism as a religion works is not faith-based. This is another thing that the pagans don't understand, because as they leave Christianity, which is a faith-based religion, and I know this is a problem with religion itself, people understand religion purely usually in the domain of faith-based things. So I have faith in XYZ, therefore that XYZ is called this. And so people leave Christianity, which has creeds and belief systems that allow it to be called Christianity. They think, well, okay, I'm worshiping Greek gods and I believe XYZ certain things, so therefore it is Hellenism, and I'm a Hellene. It doesn't work that way. It's not faith-based. It's not a faith-based religion. Hellene is not a faith-based uh, term. It's an ethnonym. I'm Greek. Always been Greek. And that's just I don't understand why this is like controversial for pagans. Like, I don't understand. No one bats an eye, like, who's not part of this pagan community, bats a fucking eye when I explain this stuff. They don't bat an eye. They don't go, "Oh, this is weird. Like, what do you mean? This is problematic." No one bats a fucking eye because it's common sense. No, everyone understands this except pagans. Maybe it's the out of date scholarship that you all read.
I've linked an article from one of them making this, in my opinion, rather fallacious argument. There's a lesser-known definition of Hellenism that specifically refers to all of ancient Greek culture as a whole. However, I've seen it used sparingly and mostly only in older scholarship.
Yeah, so you can use Hellenism in an academic field. So if you're a historian and you're writing a history, for example, or you're studying the past, Hellenism takes on that definition for the historical purposes of talking about however they want to define it. Greek culture, and how do you define Greek culture historically as a historian? Those definitions or those opinions on Hellenism from the historian do not translate to a claimed identity.
Folks from the above-mentioned groups tend to try to strawman this into meaning that all of modern Greek culture falls under Hellenistic and Hellenism, but outside of the YSCE, I've met few Greeks that agree with this definition.
Oh, so your anecdotal experience on the few Greeks, how many did you meet, don't agree with that. Okay, well, I'm a Greek, and so my answer to you is that yes, Hellenism does describe our culture today. Even the Christian Greeks, they get to use it. They get to use it too, just like me. And that fighting between ethnic Greeks like me, who worship the gods, and the Christian Orthodox Greeks, between me and them, we fight then over Hellenism and what it ought to be about, and how should we move forward as a people in context of Hellenism. That's between me and other Greek people, not you and the Greek people. That is like a colonizer mentality of you're a xenos, you're a stranger to this conversation, coming in here and saying, "Oh, I'm going to define Hellenism like this because, well, my opinion matters." No, it doesn't really matter to what it means. Sorry. No, it just doesn't. You're just not part of the conversation.
So I think it's safe to mostly discard it when our focus is on the religion. We have no proof the ancient Greek religion survived as anything other than syncretic traces in modern...
You don't have proof.
Modern Orthodox Christianity, even if Greece is filled with references and monuments from ancient times. The idea that a specific group of modern Greeks should define a term so exclusively is itself ethnic gatekeeping.
Okay, so this is hysterical. This is really hysterical. She thinks that I can't believe she thinks this is like serious. This is a serious position to take. That, because again, listen to her words. She is approaching Hellenism from a purely religious category. That I'm going to use it purely religious, and therefore it's religion. No ethnicity gets to define all religion. This is very problematic because, again, this is an outsider. This is a non-Greek person butting in to Greek affairs, Greek discussions, Greek issues and conversations, our Greek identity, our infighting as Greek people, and it's butting in and is trying to, I don't know, appropriate, cause problems, appropriate the term. They want to appropriate the term for themselves. Um, Again, no, it's not a strictly religious category, and you cannot make it a strictly religious category for your benefit to appropriate. Again, it is not a faith based religion. It's not a faith based religion.
Full stop. We're all working with the same primary and secondary sources from history, and there
No, not really.
isn't some special right or insight for folks that have Greek blood over the rest of us when it comes to a reconstructed tradition.
Oh my God. Okay. Greek people have never said that, oh, I have Greek blood, therefore that means I'm better than you or I know something you don't know. Okay? That's never been the argument. What Greek people have always tried to get across is that we have a experience. We have a different experience than you because we are Greeks. We come from our families. We come from regions in Greece. We have local traditions. We have our lived experience, our way of life, our livings, our mannerisms, the way we talk, or the way we think, uh, all of that. That's when that's our culture, our identity, our history. We have that, you don't. And so that is the difference between the Greek and you, because you don't have the same experience as us. And what you're trying to do is basically say that you and me are the same in this arena. We're not the same. You can't even say the Greek words correctly. Kairete, like you don't even speak Greek correctly. And you want to be able to make these videos and claim to teach people what Hellenism is wrong. It's just really wrong. It's deeply offensive. It's really deeply offensive. We're not on the same playing field here. We're not doing the same things. You think your reconstruction is the same thing as what I do? That's delusional. It really is delusional.
However, because of the rather loud nature of those who like to shout about this sort of thing, sometimes people outside of those organizations see the term Hellenismos as a flag, much the way that some heathens see...
How is it a flag? Oh my God.
A satru as a flag, because of the AFA, and let folks from those groups claim the term Hellene and Hellenismos in favor of Hellenism and Hellenist. I tend to take this approach. I refer to what I practice as Hellenism.
Again, this person doesn't understand the labels she's using. She thinks there's a difference between Hellenism and Hellenismos. So she's saying, what was this? Oh my God.
In favor of Hellenism and Hellenist. A satru as a flag, because of the AFA, and let folks from those groups claim the term Hellene and Hellenismos in favor of Hellenism and Hellenist.
Okay, so basically your problem is language. You don't understand the Greek language. You don't understand the Greek word and its English counterpart in translation. So you're saying let the Hellenes have Hellenismos and let the Hellenists have Hellenism. I don't understand why you don't understand that Hellenism is the English word for Hellenismos. So you want to claim, so basically what you say is you want to claim the English word Hellenism, and the Greek people can have the Greek word Hellenismos. Is no one like understanding how this is stupidity? You want the English word, we'll get the Greek word. So you don't think I can't translate? So basically, I'm not allowed to translate Hellenismos to Hellenism. This is insane. This is really insane.
To take this approach, I refer to what I practice as Hellenism and myself as a Hellenist.
Okay, so you as a Hellenist, I agree. I think that is an appropriate term for you to use. Not like you need my approval. You don't. But Hellenist is a good term for non-Greeks who practice any sort of, I guess, anything that's Greek inspired. any Greek-inspired religion that a non-Greek practices, if they want to use the term Hellenist, I think that is good, and I think it's accurate. I think it's accurate. But I don't think, Aliaki, that you do Hellenism. You don't do Hellenism. You do, honestly, if you were to write a book on what you practice, it would be more appropriate for you to write a book called Ancient Athenian Religion, a Reconstructed Approach. Because you reconstruct ancient Athenian religion, right? So why would you call it Hellenism? You can't write a book called Hellenism. It would be inaccurate. When I say you can't, it's because it's inaccurate. You're not actually practicing Hellenism. You're practicing an academic-based, literary-based, reconstructed version of something that you don't have actual connection to in a living tradition. It's basically you read an Oxford book and you practice it. So you're like a scholar, you're like a classicist with religion. You practice what you read in an Oxford book. That is like classical. You should really, if you were to write a book, it should be like, classical Greek paganism, a reconstructed approach, like something like that. That actually is really represents what you do. Using the term Hellenism is incorrect because, again, Hellenism and Hellenismos, interchangeable terms that refer to each other in just different language, refer to the character and culture of Greece, the culture of Greek people, and it usually has a connotation to the ancient Greek world, but it is not divorced from the modern world and the modern Greek experience. So what you're trying to do by wedging out modern Greek people, all modern Greek people, is appropriation. It's what colonialists do. Colonizers do that. And that's what you are. You're a colonizer.
And see those groups as practitioners of Hellenismos and let them keep Hellene. You may choose to refer to yourself differently. I won't judge you. As I illustrated earlier, there isn't really a right answer when it comes to reclaimed slurs, much the same as pagan. Which, if you missed it, my video...
Hellene is not a slur to us. It's our ethnonym. It's been our ethnonym for quite some time.
On what and or who pagans are is linked in the iCard above. As for Hellenic, I tend to refer to those who reconstruct ancient Greek religion outside of the YSCE as Hellenists, and those who worship the Greek gods as eclectics or syncretists as Hellenic pagans.
People, there's not all Greek people, ethnics like me, religious ethnics, are part of the Ise, the YSEE, the Ise. We're not all Greek people are part of the Isai, where there's lots of organizations and there's people who do all sorts of things in Greece, and they're not just part of the Isai. So stop talking about the fucking Isai all the time. There's more to this than just the Isai.
Hellenistic pagan I tend to reserve for those who focus their reconstruction on that particular era, though they could also be called Hellenists. From there, you can branch out into the various subgroups modern Hellenists organize themselves into, such as Julian Hellenists, General Hellenists, Orphics, etc. I personally consider Religio Romana and Cultus Deorum to be their own thing and won't refer to either of them as Hellenic outside of when talking about Julian Hellenism. It's a personal preference, but there's such a wide difference in the practices that I do not consider them the same. Anyhow, I hope that cleared things up a little about the fight over these terms we sometimes see in this community.
No, it didn't.
Reclaimed slurs can take on messy connotations, and feel free to use whichever of these terms feels correct to you. I just want to ensure that everyone understands what I mean when I use certain terms in my videos. If you're new here, insult the subscribe button and don't let the like get out unscathed. Drop down into the comments and let me...
Okay, so again, to sum up what it seems to be going on here, we have an individual who has out-of-date academic knowledge, has limited access to knowledge, because they depend on people to gift them books. They don't understand the Greek language, can't speak the Greek language, Don't understand the interchangeability of the words like Greek and Hellene, Hellenism, Hellenismos. These words are interchangeable depending on the language they come from. They are the same thing. They don't understand what an ethnonym is. They don't understand that what the identity is. It's not faith based, so it's not based on what you believe in the faith around it. So again, Hellenism is not faith based. Believing in Zeus and worshiping Zeus does not make you automatically somehow part doing Hellenism. Um, that using the term Hellenism without being a Greek or being part of the Greek community with authorization from a Greek community to go out and represent something is appropriation. Okay, appropriating the term Hellene, Greek, basically I want to tell people, like, would you call yourself, like, stop using, this is Hellene. Okay, so let's use a different language. Let's just strictly use the English translation. Would you say that, oh, I worship Zeus, I'm Greek, if you're not Greek? Would you do that? Would you say you're Greek? No, you wouldn't. So why are you saying Hellene? Because you were never taught what actually Hellene means, and Hellene is just the Greek word for Greek, and it's the same fucking thing. It's an ethnonym. Stop approaching these things from a strictly religious, faith-based category and using the strictly ancient approaches to things, and like picking up right there from where they left off and forgetting all about the rest of history that happened afterwards. Like, seriously. All right. So this was my response to the pagan bullshit I see around me.